This one is called the Belray Surge. Now, the conspiracy goes like this. In the city of Ogden, or near the city of Ogden, Utah, there was a neighborhood called Belray Estates. This happened relatively recently, 1993. So again, it's far enough back that we can't confirm a lot of the stuff. But more recent than you would feel comfortable if this is a true story. So the story starts off that first, there was a sheep herder herding sheep out in the area. And there was a lightning storm. Just appeared. Relatively out of nowhere. It was like static in the sky. So you imagine this farmer's out there with his sheep and there's like static in the sky. It hits the ground and then moves across the ground, crawls across the ground and begins just electrocuting the sheep. Kills 12 of them. Just shocks them to death. And it's a weird, people in town were like, that's weird. There was no storms in the area, and the sheep herder, who apparently survived, said, I don't know what happened. I was just sitting out there and I felt the electrical discharge, and the next thing I know, it was crawling across the ground and it killed my sheep. No one paid it much mind. There's freaks of nature. These things happen. In the little neighborhood nearby of Belray Estates, people just kind of went about their business, went about their lives, chalked it up to a freak event, and went on. And then one day, the town was empty, completely empty. Not a person, not an animal, nothing. It wasn't a city, it wasn't a town, there weren't a ton of people there. But enough that people in the city of Ogden noticed that they were missing. And when they went out there, all they found was buildings. Empty buildings, the wind cutting through the streets. The government bulldozed the town, wiped it off the map, and it was lost to history. That is the initial mystery of the Belray Surge. To get that much of the story, first I started off and I had to find a source here, a source there, a source here. Little bits of information. Eventually I stumbled across, somebody linked a YouTube video explaining it in more detail, and it's pretty similar to the story I just told you. There's a couple things they left out of the YouTube video. They do say that they believe that this was caused by the accidental discharge of a weapon. It was basically a neutron bomb style weapon that was meant to destroy biological life but leave the buildings intact with low levels of radiation so an invading force could take out a city and then just march right into it. And that's similar to the neutron bomb. That's what they were going for with the neutron bomb. Something that would leave infrastructure standing but eliminate the enemy. I did some more, so that was their hypothesis. I found a few other ones. I actually found that the name of the technology, supposedly, is called the Ghost Circle. Now, I ran across that, and when I tried to find that info again, it took me a while, which, can be weird, or it could just be that I should have bookmarked my links, so we'll chalk it up to should have bookmarked my links. But anyways, Ghost Circle technology is the name that's been given to this weapon. Basically, just clears out an area. What's interesting about it is that a neutron bomb will disintegrate human matter or biological matter. What the Ghost Circle supposedly does is it turns living biological entities into energy. So it's not only a weapon, but it's an energy source. You could then destroy the entire city, like you're going into Moscow, you drop the Ghost Circle into Moscow, and then you use the excess energy and store it. So you're basically both removing an obstacle and creating an energy source. How likely is that? It makes a good story. Let's assume for right now that this incident happened, that the Belray Estates was wiped off the map. That story is interesting. I don't really know how the science would work. You would discharge that energy so quickly after evaporating people. I don't know how you would be able to then harness it. You bring a big giant Duracell along with you on a flatbed. I don't know. So I think that you can start off with the story of the estates and say that's true. The weapon testing may be true. And then the people being turned into usable energy, that's where you're starting to lose me. Then I came across one other theory. There was two other theories, but one of them, even the person who was stating it said, this came from my uncle, and my uncle makes stuff up. And it was that the Belray surge wasn't a weapon testing, it was a UFO. And I don't want to say like invasion, but it was multiple UFOs over the neighborhood of Belray, and they were shooting lights down into the city and things like that. And I will completely dismiss that because even the person posting it says this comes from an unreliable source. However, the third one was that this gentleman talked to someone in Ogden because he lived in the area. And the man says, oh, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, the Belray surge. What happened was they were doing mining operations in the area. And when they were blowing the rock apart, what happened was there was a chain reaction underneath the earth. And what made it odd was that the chain reaction, when they detonated this dynamite, it didn't break in the way that they thought it would. It traveled through tunnels, almost like something was propelling the force through the tunnels in multiple directions, and it caused this release of this gas that caused a lot of people to get poisoned, and they had to leave the area. And then to cover that up, it was an industrial conspiracy. Basically, the mining company said, you know what, we're just going to cover this up. Here's some hush money. Everyone leave town. We don't want to get fined, and they just shut everything down. I actually think that as unlikely as that is, that's probably more likely than the ghost circle. And here's why. Something like the ghost circle technology, if it was real, it would be in more widespread use. Even if you couldn't control it, even if you had trouble controlling it, we would still see it pop up across the planet. Like, you can cover up one event, maybe. And also, if they lost control of it, then why didn't it just keep creeping through this, to the farther cities of Ogden and stuff like that? But if it was successful, then they'll go, okay, let's go stage 2. We can use this to clear out a room. We can make just people disappear. No one will ever know what happened to them. There's no evidence that they even disappeared. And we're not seeing that. So those are the three theories that we have. We have that it was an accidental or maybe even purposeful. It could have been an accident. It could have been a purposeful test of the weapon because it was such a small community. It could have been UFOs. It could have been a mining accident that got out of control. If this story is true, I don't think it's any of those three. One, and we'll go backwards, there's no record, there's no name of the mining company. There's no record of any sort of industrial accidents in that area. Even the person who told the story couldn't name the mining company. And conveniently, the mining company pays all the money to keep everyone hushed up. So, never reached court. So there's no records for that. The UFO story is, again, came from an unreliable source. The ghost circle technology, as intriguing as that is, that we've built a weapon that can do that. Again, we already have a weapon that can do that. It's a neutron bomb. If you're just trying to eliminate people and keep the infrastructure up. And if we're going to test a weapon like that, there's 1,000 other communities that we could have done it in. One thing that the people, I run into this a lot with conspiracy theories and stories like this, that you notice that, like HARP, when they're talking about the weather control system, it's tested in the United States. Like, they think that because the U.S. government is testing the weapon, they test it on their own population. We have tested, acid and aerosol weapons on Americans, sure. But on a global scale, if you wanted to test this ghost circle technology, why would you do it to a city in America in 1993? So this wasn't like back in pioneer days, or even like in the 50s. You would put it on a plane and take it to Venezuela and find a village to use it on. Or you'd go to the farthest outskirts of Siberia and use it over there. You do it. You could just use it to see how it affects animals. Why would you do it on a town? It's about 30 miles south of Ogden, Utah. This isn't some desolate area where no one's ever been. This was a nice neighborhood, supposedly, if it existed. So don't buy any of those explanations. It's possible that the city, so we'll go back to the original story, it's possible that the story is completely made up. It's possible that the neighborhood existed at some point and people just moved out of it. That's not likely. Generally, especially again, this is fairly recent, 1993. It's probably in most of my listeners' lifetime. It's definitely in mine. So that leaves us with the story not being true. There's two caveats to that. One is that supposedly there's satellite footage of before and after. So we see satellite footage of the town, satellite footage of nothing. And they talk about that in the YouTube video, and they actually show some photos. Here's the problem. I can't find the photos. And if you're testing a weapon, if you're that level of the government where you're testing weaponry on the U.S. population and then completely covering it up, I think you have access to the photos of the satellites. I think they could easily call up the 1993 equivalent of Google and say, hey, remove those. Because we know that they do that now. We know they draw black boxes over secure areas. So, again, that doesn't wash. But this was something interesting I came across. And all of my research going back and forth and watching YouTube videos and things like that, we'll take this with a grain of salt. I thought this was interesting. And I'm going to read portions of his post here. This was back from 2016 when he wrote this. I've decided that, after collecting all of the images I will attach, that the Belray, or Belray's surge, those are all the different spellings of it, is simply a myth. I think the original person who mentioned it was inventing the name then and there. There is no local history to the area, and although things like this are really easily covered up, nothing matches and logic prevails. Logic prevails! Pickle party. Okay. Then he goes on to say there is literally no coordinates maps, no townspeople made maps or sketches of the hill range nearby, and no local authority to that section of land south of Wildcat Road, which makes it hard to go back in history and find what was originally there before 1993. So, we just have this empty area, and he's saying we don't have any maps, people haven't got any maps, which again leads the credence to it was always empty, because why would you need maps and structures if there was nothing there? Why would you need maps showing structures or even people going out there and doing detailed maps if there was no reason to be out there? So again, he's debunking it, but this was what I thought was interesting. He goes, but I did make some success, and I admit some of the things I found were a bit strange, like the abandoned landlines. These things I found in the road that I think are movement detectors, and the fact that if you compare my satellite images of the area between February 2nd, 1992, and April 1993, there is a massive change in nature and landscape. The water holes appear, property lines disappear, phone lines go up. Yes, that's right. In 1992, there is no telephone poles by the side of the road, and in 1993 onwards, there is. All connected and leading to one unconnected pole by the edge of another watering hole. WTF. And then he includes a link to a zip file with all of these photos. So, let's take him at his word that he's done this research. He can come across, and I think the most suspicious thing, I think the fact that the telephone poles went up after 1992 isn't necessarily that suspicious, because if the area's, the area is still getting civilized at that area, putting that up. I do think it's weird that they all kind of connect to an unconnected pole. And the fact that there's what he considers massive change in the nature and the landscape of the area. Interesting. I applaud this guy for going out and doing his research and really digging into it. It's also suspicious that that zip file that is on the Mega Upload site is gone now. Does all of that mean that the Belray Surge story is true? Just on the facts, no. I think it's a story that feels good and it's creepy, and it could be true, and I think it's kind of like the Dublin, Wisconsin story, where it's scary to think that an entire group of people can go missing. But the interesting thing about the Belray Surge, if you were making up this conspiracy, I think one place they tripped up is they provided too much detail. It's a weapon called the Ghost Circle. that can eliminate biological matter and leave buildings standing, and it may or may not convert them to energy, and it was a weapons test, and Dublin was just, people disappeared. So your brain gets to fill in the blanks. Was it demons? Was it interdimensional? Did the town never exist? Was it a ghost town? Was it a military test? Was there some sort of madness in the area? Did people just up and leave? Was there a zombie attack? Your brain fills in the area, fills it in. So you get to pick and choose what conspiracy works best for you. If you believe in interdimensional aliens invading, that's what happened. If you believe that ghosts, the Indians of Native Americans, ran through the town chopping people's heads off and dragging them off to some horrible hell, that happened. If you believe UFOs abducted people, that happened. It left it so open-ended. And it was far enough back that they were like, yeah, there's no maps. None of this stuff. It's just a few... Or Mandela effect. That was actually another one that could have worked with Dublin, Wisconsin. This one, the conspiracy is so specific that you can go, well, I can dispute the weapon testing. They're not going to use an energy-based weapon in 1993 on American soil. They're going to do that anywhere else in the world. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.